These details are just coming into us all the way from Washington, D.C. It is our first record that Ana Walshe felt threatened by Brian Walshe. It's a police report, guys, from 8 years ago, before the couple was even married.
Ana Walshe's body has never been found. And we have breaking news. As we come on the air, we have learned murder suspect Brian Walshe was involved in a stabbing incident at Norfolk County Jail.
A missing mother, a suspicious husband, and a trail of evidence left behind so jaw-droppingly idiotic, it could serve as a checklist of what not to do if you're trying to get away with murder. Hi, I'm Katie Ring, true crime analyst, self-defense instructor, and advocate for victims. And this is Crime House Daily, your weekday true crime companion, a Crime House original powered by Pave Studios. We follow the cases making headlines now, where justice is still unfolding. This is a Night Watch episode bringing you today's biggest crime stories. So don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Crime House Daily so you never miss an episode. This episode discusses active criminal cases and breaking news. The information we share is based on what's publicly available at the time of recording and may change as new evidence comes to light. We aim to inform, not to decide guilt or innocence, so everyone mentioned is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Tonight's case is the story of Ana Walshe, a loving mother of 3 sons from Cohasset, Massachusetts. She mysteriously disappeared on New Year's Day in 2023, and authorities think her husband, Brian Walshe, is responsible. We covered this story in a previous First Watch episode, so make sure to check that out if you want more. But on today's episode, we're focusing on Ana and the life that was taken from her. We also just found out new information about Brian, who was recently stabbed in jail with a makeshift weapon. And authorities are still left wondering, what led up to the attack? Tonight's story is about the January 2023 murder of Ana Walshe. Her husband, Brian Walshe, is accused of killing and dismembering Ana in their Massachusetts home. Since his arrest, Brian has been at the Norfolk County Jail awaiting trial, which is slated to begin in the next coming days. This is a case that has made a lot of headlines, and one of the most recent developments occurred around 10 p.m. on September 11th when Brian was stabbed by a fellow inmate. He survived the incident and was in the hospital for less than a day before being sent back to jail, and as of this recording, the scheduling of Brian's trial hasn't been affected. So soon, he will be facing a jury, and his ultimate fate will be in their hands. Let's get into it. Ana Walshe was a loving wife and mother to 3 beautiful boys. She was smart, beautiful, and driven, and could charm anyone that would talk to her. According to the Serbian consulate, Ana was born in Belgrade, Serbia, and was a dual citizen of both Serbia and the United States. Her mother, sister, and closest friends were still in Serbia. Ana worked incredibly hard and was her family's main breadwinner. In 2008, Ana met Brian Walshe at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox. At the time, she was a reservations manager and was a married woman, so the timing wasn't right, but they stayed in touch. Eventually, Ana and her husband separated, and she started dating Brian in 2013, shortly before the divorce was finalized. She was head over heels for Brian, says Ana's longtime friend from Washington, D.C., Carrie Westbrook. Brian was flashy and showy, and that's what Ana liked about him. He appeared to embody the things she wanted. It was almost like she had a mental vision board for the house, cars, family, and the lifestyle she wanted, and she thought he could provide it. After traveling the world and living a lavish lifestyle, they got married in Boston in 2015 and welcomed their first child soon after. While her family was growing, so was Ana's career. She left the world of hotel hospitality and went into real estate, where she was selling high-end homes. But while Ana was dreaming about a glamorous future, Brian was trying to run from his past. In 2021, Brian pleaded guilty to 3 charges of fraud in connection with a 2018 scheme he devised to sell counterfeit Andy Warhol paintings on the internet. As part of his sentence, he was held under house arrest with an ankle monitor and was only allowed to leave for things like doctor's appointments and grocery shopping. Through all of this, Ana started to miss living in Washington, D.C., and longed to leave Massachusetts. So Ana took a job in D.C. at Tishman Speyer, an international property management company, sold their home in Massachusetts for over asking, and bought a beautiful home in the nation's capital. Since Brian was on house arrest, he and the boys moved into a rental home in Massachusetts, but the plan was that once Brian sorted out his legal issues, he and the boys would come join her in D.C. In the meantime, she would stay in her D.C. home on the weekdays and then fly back to Boston to be with her family on the weekends. But despite how much she loved her job and career, the long commute and being away from her family wore on Ana. Brian and Ana continued to project the appearance of a loving partnership, even though Brian's legal troubles and her job out of town were both massively disruptive. Ana's mother, Malanka Yubichik, told Fox Digital News about a week before Ana's disappearance that she had sent her mother a text reading, "Please, Mama, come tomorrow." Malanka lived in another country and told her daughter that she had to sort out all of her medications and trip details, but that she would come as soon as she could. However, Ana didn't press the issue, so her mom didn't think any more of it. After all, the message was vague and didn't specify that there was anything particularly wrong. On December 31st, 2022, the Walshe family had a friend over for dinner who later said Ana was all smiles for the New Year's Eve festivities. But near midnight on December 31st, Ana called her mom again. Unfortunately, Malanka missed that call, and according to her mom, Ana then called her older sister and one of her best friends. But none of them answered because they were either asleep because of the time difference or didn't hear the phone over their New Year's celebrations. This missed phone call is one of Malanka's greatest regrets because just 4 days later, on January 4th, Ana was reported missing. On January 4th, 2023, Ana Walshe was reported missing. No one had seen or heard from her since New Year's. Ana would sometimes go jet-setting overseas, but she was supposed to be at work doing a job she truly loved. On January 6, 2023, in a press conference with Cohasset Police Chief William Quigley, it was stated that 2 days prior, Ana was simultaneously reported missing by her husband, Brian, and her fellow employees at Tishman Speyer. According to the police, Ana was last seen at her home on January 1st. Brian claimed that she took a rideshare to Boston's Logan International Airport to fly to D.C. However, there is no evidence of her getting onto the plane or even getting picked up by a rideshare driver. Ana had disappeared without a trace, and her husband, Brian Walshe, was the last person to see Ana alive. Friends and neighbors thought of Brian as a fun-loving guy. He projected wealth and status, ordering lavishly at restaurants all around Boston. He'd rack up dinner tabs in the thousands or sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars. He became known amongst the city's restaurant operators as a whale, a big spender who'd find the most expensive things on the menu and order them without even hesitating. This created a myth and mystery around Brian, and to add to this, he was also constantly taking trips to Europe or Latin America, but no one seemed to know where his money came from. Brian would sometimes claim he sold an airline ticketing app to Expedia, or he'd declare he had made his fortune in the oil industry. There was also talk of Brian working as a high-end art dealer. Whatever questions existed about Brian's backstory, that didn't stop people from wanting to be around him. But reality would soon shatter Brian's facade of extravagance. In 2021, he was convicted of art forgery for selling 2 fake Andy Warhol paintings that he'd hired someone to create. Brian actually did own the original copies, but after he found a buyer for them, he sent the forgeries instead. The buyer quickly realized they'd been duped and tried to get their money back, but Brian wouldn't pick up the phone. The buyer was persistent and eventually got in touch with Brian, but he was only able to pay back about a third of what they had paid, so the buyer notified law enforcement. According to Assistant U.S. Attorney Timothy Moran, Brian's motivation was to sustain his lavish lifestyle. But the selling of the forgeries wasn't Brian's only illegal endeavor. U.S. District Judge Douglas Woodlock was ready to give Brian a no-jail deal in October when prosecutors brought up a totally different issue: the alleged fraud and embezzlement of Brian's father's estate. Brian and his father, Dr. Thomas Walshe, did not have a good relationship. Brian had told Ana and his friends that his father was abusive, both physically and emotionally, and he claimed the trauma of it still affected him into his adulthood. But Dr. Walsh's friends described another version of events, one that wasn't exactly flattering for Brian. Dr. Fred Pescator, who is close with Dr. Walshe, once wrote Brian was and is only interested in getting his father's money. Brian had, in fact, been accused of stealing $1 million from his father in a real estate scheme gone wrong, which drove an even bigger wedge between them and led to Dr. Walshe removing Brian from his will. But Brian wasn't going to let that stop him. After his art forgery scam was discovered, Brian needed a new source of income, and when Brian's father died in September of 2018, he thought he'd finally found it. Brian took Ana with him when he traveled out to his father's Nantasket beach home to claim his fortune. But Dr. Walsh's final wishes were clear. On his last will and testament, he had reportedly written, "I hereby bequeath to Brian R. Walshe my best wishes, but nothing else from my estate." Only there was no official record of that will because Brian allegedly destroyed it. Without any documentation, Brian was able to petition the courts and become the full representative of his father's estate. Brian immediately drained Dr. Walsh's bank account, then had a whole estate sale for his father's items and even sold his car. According to CBS News, he collected tens of thousands of dollars from it. His actions raised a lot of red flags because everyone in Dr. Walsh's social circle knew how much he resented Brian and how little he trusted his son. One of Dr. Walsh's friends, Jeffrey Ornstein, had even seen the will on the desk before Brian got into town and took a photo of it just in case Brian tried to do something unsavory. Ornstein used that photo to challenge Brian's right to his father's estate, claiming that Brian must have destroyed the will. A judge accepted the photo as proof and voided Brian's authority over Dr. Walsh's remaining possessions. Ornstein would later say Brian had been a long-term patient at Austin Riggs Center Psychiatric Hospital, where he was diagnosed as a sociopath, and this would never change. It was Dr. Fred Pescator that wrote in the 2019 affidavit filed for Dr. Walsh's will and estate, who said Brian is not only a sociopath, but also a very angry and physically violent person. He recalled an incident in China when Brian tried to steal something and injured several people. Brian's past had shown the fraud, stealing, lying, and overall bad behavior was nothing new. But did that make him capable of murder? Remember, Brian was on house arrest for the selling of the fake Andy Warhol paintings, and Ana was working and living in D.C. during the weeks before returning home for the weekends with her family. The plan was for the family to join her after a few months once Brian's legal issues with the paintings had been sorted out. Friends and neighbors had always liked Ana more, and multiple fraud charges against him didn't help one bit. And when Ana went missing, all eyes turned to her husband. At first, Brian Walshe was reportedly cooperative with the investigation into his wife's disappearance. According to his lawyer, he was cordial and always answered any questions. On January 6, 2023, the search for Ana Walshe was launched. It involved canine officers, search and rescue teams, and volunteers combing the area around the Walshes' home. And on January 8th, only 2 days after the search started, police had a major breakthrough in the case. Authorities obtained a search warrant and were able to search the Walshes' home in Cohasset, Massachusetts. It was during this home search that the police found a broken knife and blood in the basement. They also noticed that despite it not being trash pickup day, the bins at his apartment were suspiciously empty, and a search of Brian's phone placed him at multiple apartment complexes where he was caught on camera throwing away large trash bags. Police and state investigators searched the dumpsters and eventually traced some of the contents to a trash transfer facility in Peabody, Massachusetts. At that facility, they recovered bloody items, a hatchet, a hacksaw, towels, a protective Tyvek suit, cleaning agents, a Prada purse, boots, and a COVID-19 vaccination card with Ana's name on it. Some of the items had human blood on them, and DNA testing determined that both Ana and Brian Walshe were contributors to the DNA found on the items. Surveillance video from a Home Depot near the Walshes' house on January 2nd also surfaced. And in the video, you can see Brian buying hundreds of dollars worth of cleaning supplies. Court documents allege that Walshe was wearing a black surgical mask and blue surgical gloves when he made a cash purchase. Brian never told the police about this little trip to the hardware store. Instead, he claimed that after Ana left to return to D.C. on the 1st, he went to a small town called Swampscott to visit his mother, except there was no evidence that he ever went to see his mother. But there was plenty of video evidence of Brian Walshe buying cleaning supplies someone could use to dispose of a body. On January 8th, Brian Walshe was charged with misleading investigators. Then, on January 17th, the Norfolk District Attorney Michael W. Morrissey announced that Brian Walshe was being charged with the murder of Ana Walshe, to which he pleaded not guilty. Hearings for the Walshe murder began in March of 2023, and some truly shocking evidence would come to light. Brian had borrowed his eldest son's iPad on January 1st and used it to do Google searches for topics like dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body, how long before a body starts to smell, what happens when you put body parts in ammonia, hacksaw best tool to dismember, and how long for someone to be missing to inherit. Before Ana's disappearance, she confided to a friend that she was going to leave her husband and bring her 3 children to be with her in D.C. because Brian was going to be incarcerated on his pending criminal case. Another important detail the prosecutors revealed in the court hearings was that Ana Walshe had a significant life insurance to her name. In fact, she had $2.7 million worth of life insurance and named her husband as the sole beneficiary. In March of 2023, Brian's case went from Quincy District Court to Norfolk County Superior Court when a grand jury indicted Brian on charges of murder, misleading investigators, and improperly conveying a human body. His trial was set to begin on October 20th, 2025, just a few days from now. As of this recording, Ana's body has still not been recovered. As for Ana's sons, they are now in the custody of the state's Department of Children and Families. And while nothing can bring their mother back, hopefully they'll get justice for their mother's death. We should be getting those answers soon as the trial kicks off. We'll be watching all of the updates and we'll be sure to bring you any major developments. For example, the Crime House team has learned that Brian Walshe was stabbed in Norfolk County Jail while awaiting trial. Authorities say he was stabbed by another inmate with a makeshift weapon, and Brian was transported to the hospital. Allegedly, it was just a superficial wound, and he's back behind bars, but police are still wondering what led up to the violent attack. We'll make sure to keep you posted on our socials at Crimehouse 24/7. What did you think of today's case? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. And follow us at Crimehouse 24/7 on TikTok and Instagram. And subscribe on YouTube at Crimehouse Daily. For ad-free listening, join Crimehouse Plus on Apple Podcasts. You stay curious, and I'll stay on the case. See you next time.